All right, welcome everyone to the RUDIS Wrestling Podcast with your host Matt Dernlan. We're here with special guest Kayla Miracle, recently signed RUDIS athlete, um, making her way from Iowa, pit stopping in Ohio on your way to Dallas,
Yep, Irving.
for the U23 World Team Trials.
Yes.
So yeah, you're in the midst of a pretty busy 2 months, month and a half,
Yes,
really, right?
Very busy. So U.S. Open, and then U23 World Team Trials, Challenge Tournament, and then Final X in June. So busy, but love it.
Yeah. So just for those of you who may not be familiar with Kayla just 2 weeks ago won her third U.S. national title. Was also on the heels of a four-time women collegiate champion,
WCWA.
WCWA. I always stumble over
Yep.
WCWA because I think
'Cause there's-
WCW, that was an old big-time wrestling organization, right? Something like that.
And then there's the NWCA, which is the coaching something.
And now they're switching a little bit into NAIA.
It overlaps. It's just like a division within the WCWA.
Right.
Almost, yeah.
So, yeah, I was talking to your dad. So, long story short, we can jump into this. Long story short, Kayla's dad, Lee, is the head coach at Campbellsville University down in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Her dad and I grew up wrestling together. So, it's coming full circle. We had 2 weeks ago out in Vegas. It was kind of like a surreal moment growing up with your dad, and then getting to the point where we're signing you as one of our sponsored athletes. So that was kind of like a really, really cool moment. Yeah.
Family ties.
Yeah.
Gotta love it.
And I mean, in wrestling, it's not even 6 degrees of separation. People always talk about 6 degrees of separation, but it's like in wrestling, it seems like if you know one person, it's almost 1 degree of separation.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess, where do we start? So, your introduction to the sport.
So, my dad, he was a coach. My brother wrestled. And so I was just around it when I was a kid. And I got bored. I would climb the ropes, and my dad would be, coaching practice and look over and not see me on the side. He'd be like, "Oh my goodness, where's Kayla?" And then he looks up. I'm like up at the top, and he's like, "Oh, okay." Goes back to coaching. And so it was just years of that. And then I got bored, and so I asked if I could wrestle, and I asked my dad, and he was like, "No, but ask your mom." And so I asked my mom, and she was like, "Yeah, go for it." So I tried it, and my dad was, not too keen on the idea of girls wrestling yet. Just a lot of the girls he had in the past were doing it for the wrong reasons. But he let me give it a go, and since he was a coach, he tried to get me to quit, made the practices tough, and I just loved him. Like, this is so fun.
So it wasn't like he was opposed to women's wrestling. He was opposed to maybe some of the girls that he had been around and their experiences
just left
in the
a
sport.
bad taste in his mouth.
What was it?
Just girls doing it to get attention or to try and prove something or be close to the guys, just anything like that. But then after a little bit of me being in the room, he was like, "Oh wow, she actually just loves the sport. She loves to do this stuff." And
so I know you were pretty young when you started, right?
I was 4, yeah.
4. So I was gonna say, what did your dad need to see from you to understand the right motivations? But what was a tipping point where he's like, okay, I feel comfortable throwing my daughter into this? And
I don't remember, actually. I just know that when I went in, I remember getting 4th in my first tournament, but then we went to tournaments every weekend. We were driving all over the state just to get some matches and then things like that. And it was just 100% fully invested. So, and he just supported me on it.
So what was it like your first time when you stepped on the mat? Typically it seems like wrestling's one of those things where you find out pretty quickly whether you like it or not. It's a sport you're either cut out for it or you're not. There's very few people. I think there's different situations, but typically it seems like you catch the bug and get the itch really quickly. What was it about wrestling?
I don't know, at a young age, I don't remember ever thinking something specific or a specific moment happened or I won a tournament and I was like, this is awesome. That never happened for me. Um, but just trying to look back now, just seeing the progress that I've made, from little 4-year-old Kayla to 23-year-old Kayla now and how much I've grown just on the mat and off the mat. So I think that might be my favorite part.
So what was it? It's funny that it was your dad. Your dad's the wrestling coach, but he said, "Hey, get approval from your mom."
Yeah.
What did your mom have to say?
She was all for it. I'm at the tournaments anyways, might as well. It's better to be on the mat wrestling and doing something productive rather than being under the bleachers, breaking things or causing ruckus, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's always been super supportive. Like, my mom is, yeah, biggest fan. Actually, her and my dad are going to fight about that, like who's the biggest fan, but they're both super supportive.
Cool. So when did you actually, there's that period of when you started wrestling, and then I think there's that change when you fully embrace and fully become a wrestler. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, there's, and I guess I would say becoming a wrestler when you fully like give your life over to the sport, and this is who you want to be, and this is the lifestyle you want to live, because there's a big difference between participating in the
Yeah.
sport and living the sport. And what was the point in time maybe where it reached that tipping point where you knew like I wanted to go all in and this is was going to be a big part of your life?
So I'd say, like, when I started, I wanted to be an Olympic gold medalist. That was the goal, and I was gunning for it. And that was before women's wrestling was even established in the Olympics. But I don't think I actually fully committed. Like, I'd be committed for a month or for this tournament or whatever. And I did that all through high school and a lot of college too. And I got better and did all of those things, did everything that I needed to do, but I didn't really make the jumps that I needed to. And I think that happened when I decided to move to Iowa. I fully committed. I left my family, I left everything that was comfortable to put myself in a position to succeed.
It's funny you said that because for me I would have said it maybe happened before that.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, you won 4 college titles. You've
Yeah.
been on several world teams before you moved to Iowa.
Yeah. I've
Because
had a lot of success, but I think mentally, I mean, I was just doing what I needed to do. And I guess I pick up on the sport well. And I had coaches that relayed technique and messages to me the right way. So it just happened. And I grew however much I did. But, like, in my heart, I think I know that, like, when I went to Iowa is when I was fully committing. And I was saying, it's going to happen. Like, I'll give anything for it.
now, would that be like, because when you have this journey in the sport of wrestling, you're surrounded by your family and a lot everybody that's successful. It seems like they have a really committed support system around them. But I think a lot of that, maybe in your case with your dad being your coach for a big part of your life, um, was you choosing Iowa like you kind of taking total ownership of your career?
I guess in a way. Um, I mean, my dad has been a great coach for me, but I think we are so similar that we can be best friends or we can be worst enemies, and that kind of took a toll. When we would be in the room trying to work together. Um, so I think getting a kick in the butt from someone like Mark Perry, who I've never worked with, and have a different sort of respect for, and Tom Brands, Taylor Brands, people like that, they're pushing me, and not as, like, being disrespectful towards my dad. It's just, if you hear something from one other angle, it finally clicks. And I think that's what it was.
And that's got to be, kind of a testament to your dad, like understanding, like in a way he's maybe letting you go.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any part of that conversation? Did you guys have that conversation? Like when you were discussing, how did the conversation about Iowa come up, and how did it progress, and what was some of the dialogue that you and your dad had?
I don't think I approached it the best way that I could have, because it wasn't so much of a discussion. Like, should I do this? What do you think? It was more like, hey, I want to do this, the end. And so that, took him by surprise. He thought I was going to stay in Campbellsville and we would do the whole coaching thing together, and we would, create a dynasty there, take over the college world, all of that. And that would have been great. But I just took him by surprise. And so that took a toll on our relationship. And then we worked through it, and, he's supporting me, just as much. He still loves me. I'm still his daughter. And, at the US Open, he was still in my corner, so.
He's always going to be in your corner.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Literally and figuratively. Like, he'll jump in if I don't have a coach, or, because I remember one match, Perry was coaching Lauren at the time. And so he jumped right in, and it's normal. He knows what to say to me. He knows how to coach. He's a good coach. So it works well.
Yeah. So how's that dynamic? And another like 1 degree of separation in the wrestling world. Mark and I coached together at Penn State for 1 year, right after Mark got out of college. He came out to Penn State and we coached together at Penn State, and then he made his progression over to Cal Poly, and then to Illinois, and then back to Iowa. So in a way, he's come full circle, but there's that 1 degree of separation between who your coach is. I know your coach, in a personal way and in a professional way as well. Talk to me about Mark as a coach.
He's awesome. He is so smart. Like, it's crazy. He'll be talking about some move that some guy did however many years ago, and would probably be able to tell you, like, the color of the shoes that they were wearing. Just crazy. He's just a video junkie. Like, he'll just watch so much film. I remember he's watching Beat the Streets at his house, and I'm over at my house, and he's just texting me. He's like, this is the gameplay, and this is this, and blah, blah, blah. And so he's just super excited and eager, and like 100% invested in not just like me, but us girls in the Hawkeye program, and then all the guys too.
And it's one of those things that, Mark, take this, if you're listening, Mark, take this in the most endearing way possible. Like, sometimes people have asked me about Mark. I'm like, he's kind of like Rain Man a little bit, in the sense, like, his capacity to retain and reference like very specific points in wrestling. It's like, it's super impressive, right? Yeah. It's crazy. And like, people can talk wrestling and you're around wrestling, but he's got a wrestling mind where he remembers certain specific situations, the nuances, like specific things. Like, I remember this match like 10 years ago, this Russian versus so-and-so. And like, he's saying names, weight classes, years, tournaments. I'm like, how do you recall all this stuff? Right.
It's wild. His brain is very impressive, and he's really great at relaying all the information too. He works really well with us, like on the technical side, and then just pushing us.
So how different was that? Like, because that's a big move. One, moving away from your coach, the only coach you've really known.
I had whole life. A different coach in high school.
Okay.
Matt Bailing, because I went to boarding school. So
boarding school at always in Indiana.
Indiana, yes. Culver Academies.
Culver, yes. That's right. Culver Academy. The headmaster at Culver is Buxton, right?
It was Buxton.
Was.
Yeah.
And Jeff Buxton, brother.
Yes.
Another, exactly. 1 degree of separation, right? Because Mark wrestled for Jeff. That's funny. Mark wrestled for Jeff in high school at Blair.
So did my brother.
Yes, that's right.
And so my brother wrestled for Jeff, and then I went to school at Johnny B's. We would always call him Johnny B.
Yeah. So, and coincidentally enough, Indiana, I guess for any of you women who are aspiring to be a RUDIS sponsored athlete, it'd be a great starting point if you're from the state of Indiana. Our 2 women sponsored athletes right now, Kayla Miracle and Sarah Hildebrand, both hail from the Hoosier State.
Yes. Sarah and I go way back. I remember my first trip to Fargo. We were roommates. And, you know, she just took me under her wing, and we were roommates the next year too. And I remember there's some pictures of us from high school, you know, sitting at sectionals or regionals and things like that. And she's just been awesome to me. I love her so much. She's great.
And talk about that a little bit, because wrestling is such a close-knit, small, tight community.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you compartmentalize that and break it down even more into the women's side of things,
Mm-hmm.
it's growing and it's expanding, and there's all these governing bodies around the country that are sanctioning high school women's sports, which I think is phenomenal.
Yes.
But you were still kind of in the precursor before that. There wasn't really any women's sanctioned governing bodies when you were coming through high school, correct?
No, California and maybe like Washington and Texas or like Hawaii. But now there are a lot more. You know, Michigan, Indiana has it. Another state just popped up. I think it was Maryland.
Yeah,
just the other day.
Maryland just the other day announced it, I think. And I think Ohio is.
Yeah.
I think Ohio is working on that. I mean,
just everywhere.
I think in the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to see as many men's wrestling states. There's going to be a similar number of women's. And I think eventually, like in the next, hopefully it's less than a decade, but it's inevitable that it's going to be an NCAA Division I sport.
It's
for
growing.
Sure. Yeah.
Rapidly.
Yeah. So anyways, I guess we kind of spiraled off, mushroomed off in a sidebar. But how important was that to have someone like Sarah in your life that you could kind of look up to and identify with? Mm-hmm. Because you were embarking on a different journey. You're a woman in historically a men's sport, right? And so how important was that to have someone like Sarah that you could really identify with, or someone that you could identify with together?
Yeah. So growing up when I was a kid, I was always a big Clarissa Chun fan. And then when I got to high school and I met Sarah, well, actually, it was my 8th grade year that I actually went to Fargo for the first year. It was awesome to see not just Fargo and all of the girls competing, but like be friends with one of them and like get to know her and like have her as a close companion. You know, like we could text each other, you know, if any trip was coming up or whatever. So it was nice to just have that friend that had that in common, because, you know, I have a lot of friends that are non-wrestlers. And if I have friends that are wrestlers, they would be boys, you know, because that's just what my team consisted of. So
cool. So let's jump back into the Hawkeye Wrestling Club,
right.
Because you guys made a big statement a couple weeks ago. Let's even back up further to that, to how the Iowa discussion even started. Like, who initiated contact first? Because number one, I think most people in wrestling wouldn't associate maybe the Hawkeye Wrestling program with women's wrestling. Maybe. I don't know if that's a fair statement or not. But the way they jumped in such a big way, they went all in.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have like what, five women training full time?
Yes, 5
full-time resident athletes out in Iowa City. So walk us through that conversation. How did it start? Who initiated contact?
All right. So Lauren had actually been there for a few years. I think she initially went in to work with Duro, and then Allie went in just like a year ago or 2 years ago and was going kind of back and forth. And that was through Corey Clark. She would be visiting him. So, and then she decided she wanted to train there. Tom asked her, I guess. I don't know the full story. I guess you'd have to ask her. And then just last summer, she was like, hey, let's train right before Spain. You know, we have no camp right before, and we all need to train, and we can hang out and just have fun, whatever. And so this is right around 4th of July. And it was myself, Michaela Beck, and Forrest. And we were like, all right, let's go. So we all met up there and trained for a few days, and we loved it. You know, the first practice nearly killed us. You know, the Iowa room is super hot and it's really intense, and we were not prepared for that at all, but it was awesome. We were like, this is next level stuff, you know. And then I guess they might have had like discussions in the background. I don't know. And then Tom asked us, he was like, hey, like, is this something you guys might want? And he came and talked to us and was like, is this a realistic thing? Like, would you guys want to move to Iowa and make this step? And we were all 100% for it.
Now, did Tom Brand, when we're talking
Yes,
Tom, we're talking shorthand. So we're talking, when we talk about Allie, we're talking about Allie Reagan. When we're talking about Forrest, we're talking about Forrest Molinari. When we're talking about Lauren Louv.
It's like
I always believe.
Yeah, believe.
I should know this because she was in doing a clinic a couple weeks ago for us, and she said that it's like believe, just believe, but
yeah, I had to ask her too.
Yeah,
training with her for weeks, and I was like, can you please tell me how to say your last name? Because I keep messing it up.
And most people in the sport of wrestling, if you say Tom, you kind of think Tom Brand. So did he lay out a comprehensive vision? Like, this is what the women's resident athlete program is going to look like. This is what we want to create. This is our goal and our vision for you guys.
I don't remember that first conversation too much because there was a lot going on. We were getting ready to leave the country and packing up, and just a lot of, I guess, adrenaline and craziness going on. But then throughout it, there would be texts like, he made it clear. He's like, we want Olympic champions. We want gold medals, at the Worlds and the Olympics. And he made it clear it doesn't matter at what weight, if there are two of us at one weight, he doesn't care which one of us it is, as long as we have one of us, So thankfully, we're in a span of 3 weight classes, 50 for the Olympics, 57, 62, and 68. So that's nice. But yeah, that's their goal, is to win the medals. And if we're willing to put in the work, they're also willing to put in the work.
Because how does it run there? So Mark is the RTC. He is the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, the head coach of the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. So the entire resident athlete, so there's 5 women, 6 women. How many men?
5 women, and I'd say it's somewhere near the same, about 6. I'd have to count. I'm not sure. Somewhere around there, though.
Okay.
But it's not too big of a group of us.
Gotcha. So what was your biggest assumption? What was the biggest myth going into the program that you had? Like, the biggest perception of Iowa, the Iowa wrestling program. What's the biggest misconception that people have about the Iowa wrestling program?
I mean, everyone thinks Iowa is just a bunch of, it's always business. They're like working robots type thing. They're just go, go, go. And they don't have much of a personality, but you sit and talk to them, and they're all really awesome, cool people. And they are very different, like, once you get to know each side of them.
So be honest, were you scared of Tom Brands when you first had a conversation?
Tom Brands. Terrified of him.
What is it? I'm sure there's a lot of things that people see as Matt's side demeanor, and I think that's a true part of him.
Well, he's more calm than Terry. Terry Brands is even more out there, aggressive. So I don't know, just first, like, the respect that I have for both of them. They've both done awesome things. And then I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it. They're just crazy awesome people, and they just want me to put my all in, And so if Terry's watching me during practice, like the other day, his eye's on me and he's across the gym, and I just hear, Kayla, Miracle, and I'm like, oh man, what am I doing wrong? And I'm like trying to wrestle my best, and it's obviously I want to get better for myself, but for him, I don't want to be messing up in front of him almost. It's weird.
Yeah, because it is their lifestyle. I mean, it's their life. It's not a lifestyle. It's their life.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what you have to be. Mm-hmm. And so you've been fully there because you still had to finish up college last fall, right? You still had some coursework to finish up. So you didn't fully get moved to Iowa City until
end of December.
Yeah. So you haven't been there that long. I mean,
Not too
it's,
long.
yeah.
I've been in and out. I had the trip over the summer when we all went. And then at the beginning of the school year, it was maybe first or second week of classes, I moved my stuff out and trained for a little bit. And then went back to school. And then I went out right before U23 Worlds. So.
Okay. What, assessing your development, what's your biggest area of growth since you've been out there?
I think mentally, I've grown the most, because there are a lot of really little things that keep getting fixed and developing throughout the wrestling. But it's also things like just moving off the whistle, that's not like a skill necessarily. That's just mentally, you have to be like, all right, you're going to be disciplined enough. When you hear it, you're going to go, things like that. So I think mentally, being completely focused and then also believing in myself is a huge one.
Because really, you've only got one step left to take. And I mean, there's once you make that final step, and I'm talking about making the senior team. You've yet to make a senior team. Mm-hmm. I believe you've made every age group team up to this point.
Cadet Junior U23, yep.
Yeah. And so, there's one final hurdle, hopefully that, mm-hmm. and it's not the hurdle. I mean, making the team's not the goal, mm-hmm. right? But
it's just a step to the
but you got to, to get to that final goal of winning world and Olympic, you got to make the team. Mm-hmm. You can't win the goal unless you're on the team. And so it is an important step.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest separating point from making an age group national team to making the senior level team?
I don't know what the disconnect has been for me. I don't know what's kept me from performing at senior trials. I've been number 2 for the past 2 years. I was behind Helen, and then I was behind Mallory. And both of them went on to do really well. Helen won gold that year, and then Mallory just won bronze. So, and I'm, wrestling Mallory at other tournaments and doing really well. So it's like I know where I'm at, and I know that level, but it's just like letting myself believe that. And with, the age level things, I don't know, I think that was just not that I expected to win, but I knew where I was and I knew how well I could do. And I really believed in myself there. So just translating that over to that next age group.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know you have a coach that believes in you because, mm-hmm. Talking to Mark, and that's the one thing I love about Mark is like he has like an uncompromising level of belief in his athletes. Mm-hmm. And he's told me, he's like, Matt, he's like, and I'm sure he shared this with you, so I'm going to share it with you now. He's like, Kayla can be the best women's wrestler, regardless of weight class. He's like, she's got that ability. He's like, now she's got to dive in. And he's like, all the things that you're addressing, like with your training environment now in Iowa, he's like, she has all the tools, mm-hmm. mentally, physically, lifestyle, everything to be the best woman wrestler in America. Does he share that with you?
Yeah, he's told me a few times just how much he believes in me and like how much he knows that I can grow. And, Final X, he'll talk about things like that and wrestling Mallory all the time. He's like, I can't wait for you to go out there again. He's like, I'm so excited for it. I'm like, yeah, I'm excited to compete too, but like, it's awesome to see how excited he gets because he knows that I can do great things. And like his super strong belief in me helps me to believe in myself almost because it's like a nice outside perspective, because you're always your greatest critic.
Right.
So I'll always be like, oh, I stink at this or whatever. And it's like, all right, we're working on it. Like we're getting better and, just growing.
So what's it like being, because you guys, essentially you have your own team. It's different. I mean, you're in a college environment, but you also have your own team. And I wouldn't separate the men and the women. You're one, it's a resident athlete team. It's the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. You have 10 full-time members living, training, being together. How much is that And again, we'll rewind to Campbellsville, where they won the national title last year. So you were part of one of the best, and last year the best women's program in the country. But now you're part of a team where everybody's training with that one goal of the world team, the Olympic team. How is that? How has that dynamic changed your mentality at all, or your approach? Does it help having like everybody living the senior life?
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, in college, everyone wants to do well, but it's how well do people want to do? You had the people that they just wanted to have good enough grades to be part of the team, and then you had people that wanted to be varsity, and then you had people that want to be 4-time national champions. And it's just a very wide array, So the motivation levels were very different. But then you go into the Iowa room with the college guys and the Hawkeye Wrestling Club team, everyone is just like gung ho. Everyone wants to be the best, And so that, just wrestling, the intensity level in the room, or just the vibe in the room, like you can walk in and you can feel it. So that's awesome. It's nice to be a part of, and that's it. If I'm having a bad day or I'm exhausted, something like that, and I walk in the room and then we start warming up and everyone else is just like, boom, like, let's get to it. Like, I'm like, all right, wipe it off. Wake up, Kayla. You're fine. You'll sleep after this.
So you've been on the grind. So we've been talking really into wrestling, and I kind of wanted to segue into some other areas, getting to know who you are, the person behind the wrestler. And a lot of times people just get caught up like identifying like, oh, this is who, and they just think that's all you are. But along this journey, because you're basically 20 years into the sport, close to 20 years in the sport, what's the biggest thing that you enjoy? What's the funnest thing about wrestling, even now?
I think the people.
Yeah.
Really. I like being on teams with different people, meeting different people, working with different people. Just wrestling is a very different group. You have all people from different walks of life. And so it's nice to be able to get to know them and just like do life with them,
So, I think there's a perception also that you have to be 24/7, 100% locked into wrestling all the time. And that's impossible. You really can't. I mean, you're going to either you're probably, if you with that mentality, you're going to burn out and fade away really, really quickly. So what are some of the other things, some of your outlets in life that lets you get away from wrestling, and what are some of the things you enjoy?
I mean, I'm down to do pretty much anything. I can go outdoors and go hiking, or I can sit in a coffee shop for 7 hours, like I like all sorts of different things. Love to sit and watch Netflix. I have a cat. Her name's Stassi. I love her.
Where did Stassi come from?
Like the name?
Yeah.
So we watched this show called Vanderpump Rules. It's a reality TV show, and that is one of the characters.
Gotcha. I am not up to speed on the reality TV. I've heard of it. So Stassi.
Yes, Allie had us watch it. And I'm not caught up, and she's very upset with me for that, but it's all right. One of these days, maybe I'll watch all of the 15 seasons or something crazy. It's wild.
So when you're on these, because you're traveling internationally all the time, and, I have conversations with a lot of people like, and wrestling's afforded you the opportunity to see the world, but a lot of times it's like, no, I see a lot of wrestling gyms. I see a lot of wrestling gyms from around the world. I don't necessarily get to enjoy the world. Have you gotten to the point when you're on these overseas trips that you try and step back and like take periods I actually want to see what this culture is about, enjoy what the culture is about? Or are you still locked in? Because I say that because, we do another podcast with Kerry Collette, and he's like, that's the one thing where I never could separate myself. I was so into the sport and so locked in, like I never got to appreciate the places I went, the people and the cultures that I was in. Have you gotten to the point where you can enjoy the cultures, or?
I think it depends on the trip specifically, like what I'm going there for. Is it a world championship? Is it a training camp? Things like that. And then how long it is. If I have the time, after uh, Junior Worlds in Macon, France, we had a day after. So I remember my dad and we went to some small town and explored the vineyard and did all of that exploring type thing. In Spain, we usually go over the summer it's a tournament, and then we have like a week-long camp. So we can explore Madrid a little bit. But then if you have a short trip, like I don't even know where right now, but you have to be locked in before the tournament. You can go a little bit, you can walk around a little bit, but you don't want to get too tired. You don't want to wear yourself out too much, because you're there for business. It's a business trip. So
Yeah.
take care of that first, and then if time permits, then go explore.
Where's the coolest place that you've been?
It's tough because I've been to a lot of different places, and I kind of rank them based on, like the place itself, the food, the accommodations, the team that I was on, how I did, all of that stuff. But I think Japan was probably one of the best trips, and that was for the World Cup last year, and that was really awesome.
And you do have, was that part of it? Was it culturally too?
Mm-hmm. But I didn't. They had a camp afterwards, and everyone else got to stay. But I had to, myself and Forrest had to go back to the States because we had U23 trials, so we had more business to take care of. So we didn't get to explore it culturally as much.
Gotcha.
But the food was amazing. So
what was the best food that you've ever had overseas?
Okay, so I'd say that Macon, France trip. After the tournament, we went to the vineyard and we found this random restaurant, and their menu was just written on a chalkboard, and it was a super tiny place, and they just brought it over to us, and we didn't even know what it said. We were just like, this and this, whatever. And they were like, all right, would you like dessert? And I'm like, we'll see. Like, maybe like ask me after type thing. And they were like, no, we need to know now. I'm like, okay, sure, we'll try like these things. And the food was amazing, but then the dessert, it tasted like they had gone and picked the berries and then made the dessert right after I told them the order. Like, it wasn't like store-bought or anything like that. It was amazing.
So what's the worst thing that you knowingly or maybe unknowingly ate on a trip?
I'm not too picky. I'll try pretty much anything, and I don't remember anything like really getting to me and being like, oh, that was terrible. And especially before a tournament, I'll stick to, chicken and rice type stuff and be pretty safe with that. But then after, I'll try things, and I don't remember anything being too gross.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did have horse in Russia, and so the idea of that kind of freaks me out, but it actually tasted pretty good. So
now, is it more, and I've heard other people talk about like eating horse, and I think, domestically here in the States, we associate horses with, big pets, right? This is something that you would have on a farm, that you grow up, that you ride. It's a bigger version of a dog. So is it more the perception of I'm eating a pet or like I'm eating some foreign type of meat, like a horse? Like, is it more
definitely
like,
more of like the idea of like a horse being like that?
Right.
It's like, really?
Yeah.
Like Spirit, that cartoon movie. Like, I'm eating Spirit? Really?
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah. Was it good?
I liked it. I had a second piece. So
a lot of times people say, it tastes like chicken when they're associated.
It was just like salami or whatever. That's how it was sliced up.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was round. And it was like pretty thin slices. So.
Do you order it like a steak, like medium rare? Or do they just bring it out?
So we were actually in Russia, and we were doing, I think that one was a training camp, and the Federation, like the Russian Federation, took all of us down, and we went into town, and we went to this restaurant, and they had all sorts of plates. Like, we didn't order our food. They just had everything left and right.
So are there parts of the horse that you order? Like,
Oh,
like
I don't know.
with
It
the
was just
different
on a
parts,
plate, and they
like
said
with
this is
steak, like
horse.
the sirloin or the T-bone or the fillet or this and that. They're just
I'm
just-
sure there might be, but I just ate whatever was on the plate in front of me.
so you're not that nuanced in the specific parts of the horse. You
No.
just have eaten a horse.
Nope. Just
Okay.
eat the horse.
Right. That's interesting. Now people don't judge, right? It's just like you got to eat what's put in front of you. You really don't have a choice, and a lot of times it's
Culture.
like it's culturally like you don't want to insult people as well, right? You want to be a gracious guest and all that stuff. So when you're overseas, what's one of the things like when you leave the U.S. like you have to take this with you? Is there any set things? Or are you pretty flexible that way as well?
I'm pretty flexible. You mean specifically with food?
Anything, just anything in general, like a creature comfort, like that makes you feel more settled when you're away from home.
I mean, I'll usually just bring like my iPad or something so I can watch Netflix while I'm up in the middle of the night, because I'll usually be able to fall asleep really well, and then I'll wake up at 11 or 12 and be up almost all night. So a lot of Netflix. But other than that, I'm really flexible. I can sleep, on the ground if I needed to. Yeah.
Pretty adaptable. Does that come from your dad's military upbringing?
Probably.
Kind of. Yeah.
Improvise, overcome, and adapt. That's what he ingrained in our minds.
Yeah. Well, cool. I appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah.
So excited about you being a part of the RUDIS program.
I love you guys. You guys are great.
And I mean, you embody everything that we're about, and it's a seamless alignment. We're really excited for the next, not just next 6 weeks, but the months coming up. Love to have you back leading up. We don't want to put the cart before the horse, although we couldn't put the cart before the horse because you've eaten the horse already, right?
Good point.
So,
details.
Details. But yeah, hopefully in a couple of weeks, we're talking about you making your first senior level team, what it's going to take to, capture your first medal, gold medal. And so privileged to have you part of the RUDIS team, and so excited to share this journey with you. And thanks for coming on today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.